Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Jeremy's Got Finished Podcast Radio Show, coming to you on this Friday evening, January the 31st, last day of January 2020. Hopefully you guys are rocking and rolling with all your New Year's resolutions at this point, and you haven't punted them so early in the year. And if you have, you still have time to pick things back up and really ask yourself why the goals are important to you, and how you truly want to spend your time, effort, energy as you move into, obviously, a new decade and a new year. But I wanted to drop this podcast super quick here before I finish up some work and enjoy the rest of my evening. Now, this is part of like a minimalist series that I've been reading and going through. And obviously, if you guys, have followed me for any amount of time, I do about 100 books a year on Audible. And I'm into kind of the, minimalist-ish lifestyle. I say ish because obviously there's extreme levels of, minimalism, which is basically just, living on, the essentials and not overdoing it with materialistic things. And again, I'm not an enemy of stuff. I live in a decent-sized house. We have obviously 2 vehicles. We have all the fanciest gadgets and the newest iPhones. All of it is for work. It's what we do. We film, video content. We create audio content. We have MacBooks and iPads and all the things that kind of run our business. But admittedly, I could throw away probably 90% of the stuff that I own, and it really wouldn't make a difference for me in my life. And I stumbled onto the minimalists probably 7 or 8 years ago, and I remember the original story. I don't know who started it, so I'm going to botch the name if I even try. But I remember the story was this guy took everything that he owned and he packed it up into boxes. Everything in his entire house went into boxes. And anything that he didn't use within 6 months, he sold and got rid of, because he figured, hey, if I haven't used it in half a year, I probably don't need it. Now, obviously, there's exceptions to the rule. If you live in the Midwest and you haven't used your winter boots or your jacket, and it wasn't that time of the year, sure, I guess you probably need that stuff. But for the most part, that rule kind of holds true, where if you haven't used something in 6 months or a year, is it really that important to your life? And even as I sit in my home office right here, if you're watching me on YouTube, I look around, we have so many, books and boxes and guides and different things, where these are all books I've read before, and I'm not saying I should throw them away, but how many more times am I going to physically look through them when literally I listen to every single book on audio tape at this point? And the reason I share that is because I am a fan of the minimalist-ish lifestyle. There's certain things that obviously luxuries I don't want to give up. I think we live in the greatest time that's ever been, where we have access to everything. But I do think a lot of us, have too much of nothing and not enough of everything else. And I believe a lot of people are drowning in possessions and things, and their priorities sometimes are just a little bit out of whack and out of shift. And so this is a written piece by Joshua Becker over at becomingaminimalist.com. If you guys are interested in kind of that lifestyle and that movement, it's over there. Now, I'm not obviously going to go live in a tiny house. I'm 6'2", I'm 215, 20 pounds, depending on how many cookies I ate. So that kind of thing doesn't really appeal to me. I like living obviously in Scottsdale and be surrounded by everything and be able to go places and have friends over and do things. And so I do like space and I do like stuff, but probably not to the level of most Americans, especially just because I know the true cost of the things that we have in our lives. And the title of this is, We Don't Buy Things with Money, We Buy Them with the Hours of Our Life. And I've said that for a very long time, well before I stumbled onto this particular piece and even kind of the minimalist movement. I've always believed that, maybe because I grew up with not a ton of money, so we didn't have abundance. We had enough stuff, but never so much like we could donate to charity, or never so much I could give somebody hand-me-downs. I'd be much more likely to get hand-me-downs as clothes or borrow clothes from friends than be able to give them the excess that I had. So I guess part of that is rooted in me and who I am, and for the fact of a lot of material possessions aren't going to move the needle in my life, regardless of what I get. If my house was another 1,000 square feet bigger, or if I had another vehicle or a different kind of car, or 2 more pairs of pants and 3 more, hoodies, if you're talking to me specifically, it really doesn't change the scope of my life and what I do. And that's why I say, we don't buy things with money, we buy them with the hours of our life. Or As Henry David Thoreau put it, the price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it. And I'll repeat that again because it's a super powerful phrase. And I think if you operated your life with that quote ingrained in your brain, you'd make different life choices about how you spend your time every single day. Because as we've talked about before 100 times in this podcast, we know time is the most precious commodity you will ever get, because once it's spent, you can never get it back, and none of us knows how much we really have. And that's why we live with this sense of urgency, and why we cherish certain moments and we try to be mindful of them, or at least I do when I'm there. And the quote is, the price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it. This is a life-changing principle for many of us. When we begin to see our purchases through the lens of exchanging life rather than dollar bills, we can better appreciate the weight of our purchases and understand their full cost. Because it's costing you more than just money. It's costing you time. Therefore, it's costing you your life. For that reason, I thought it'd be helpful to take a look at how much life some of the purchases you make every single day, week, month, year actually cost you. Now, again, I have to start this by saying I'm not an enemy of stuff. I like nice shit. And I'm not saying for you to, live with one pair of pants, one pair of shoes, and one shirt, and, take public transportation everywhere you go. Like, please enjoy stuff. It's your money. You can spend it however you want. You can save it for retirement. You can invest in things that pay you back. You can lease cars. You can go into debt up your ass. You can buy fancy shit and live like there's no tomorrow. I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm in no position to judge anybody for anything they do. As long as you're happy, that's the thing I would hope for you. As long as you are happy with your decisions and you are not stressed out by how you spend your money, if you're not drowning in debt, if it doesn't bother you and you literally wake up every day just jacked as fuck to do what you're doing, then please spend your time and money how you choose to. But for the sake of this conversation, understand that the median U.S. household income, give or take, is around $61,000 to $4,000 per year, depending on the year you look at, 2017, 2018, 2019, somewhere in that 60,000-ish range. But for simplicity's sake, let's round it down to 60 grand is the annual kind of median U.S. household income. Some of you guys way more money than this, some of you less money than that, depending on where you live, if you're married, if you're single, but we'll use this as $60,000 as the average. So if your household income is about 60K, working a typical 40-hour work week. Now, if you're a person like me, that's comical. We say when people are like, I work 40 hours a week, like, oh, cool. I once had a part-time job too. Now, obviously, in this entrepreneurial life, there's more demanded from us. But if you're a lucky person out there and you like what you do and they only require you to be there from 9 to 5, respect, and you make about 60K, here's how many hours a week you'd need for the following purchases. Your grande, Starbucks cappuccino, about $4. That takes about 8 minutes of your life to purchase that, or 8 minutes of work, depending on how you want to look at it. A pair of, Wrangler jeans. You and Brett Favre are homies. You're rocking the same pair of jeans. It's about $25. That would cost you about 50 minutes of your life for those jeans. A Coach purse, for you guys out there who like the Coach purse. Let's say your Coach purse is $120, $130. That would cost you about a half a day of your life to purchase that. You want the newest, 70-inch flat screen, is it 5K now? I don't even know the Ks on TVs. My TV is old as shit in our house, but still works and still looks fresh and crispy. But let's say you want the newest 70-inch, flat screen TV, the most high-def 5K unicorn tiers. It was molded by the blood sweat of He-Man. It costs $700. That would cost you about 3 days of work or 3 days of your life effort to purchase that TV. Now this one is one that's real for everybody. The 256 gigabyte iPhone, which if you're watching me on YouTube, I have the brand new iPhone, whatever it is, 11 right now. It is amazing, by the way, if you guys do use video stuff for your work or for your life. The new iPhone is so crispy. It's really hard to tell the difference between that and our professional grade cameras at this point. All the stuff it can do, it really just, if you have a job where you do it, I'll say it is worth the investment for sure. If you're just somebody who wants to look at Instagram and you text your friends, I wouldn't spend the money because it takes too much of your life to afford it. But if you want the new 256 gigabyte iPhone, whether it's the X or the 11, they're all about $1,200, $1,300, give or take. So if you want the new iPhone for $1,300, that's going to cost you about 1 week and 2 hours of work or of your lifetime to purchase that. If you go out to a dinner at a restaurant with your family and not like, these fancy steakhouses and things and Nobu and the shit we have around here, if you go out to a normal family dinner and you guys aren't drinking booze, it costs you about $80. It's about a third of a day of work, if you will. If you're trying to get a new living room set, depending on how fancy you want to get with your furniture, and obviously there's scales to this, but it costs you about 2 G's, and that would cost you about 2 full weeks of your life at work to purchase that stuff. And the car, right? You want a Ford Fusion. We're getting you a hybrid, a nice cheap 2019 Ford Fusion hybrid vehicle. It costs about $26K. Side note, I can't believe how expensive cars have gotten. Like, I'm still rolling with my 2008 Honda Accord, 143,000 miles on that bad boy. Just got an oil change yesterday. It's running like a Bentley. It's tough to beat. But I'm surprised as I look. I'll transition to a new vehicle once our house is paid off here shortly, and hopefully get something that I want. That's not too crazy, just because I can't go too insane on something that has motors and wheels and is a depreciating asset. But I'll buy something that I like because I've waited long enough at this point and I have the money. But it really blows my mind how expensive vehicles have got in comparison to wages in America, and how the scale is just becoming really backwards. And we've done a podcast already why I think car loans are stupid. But for the sake of this, if you're going to pay cash for a car, which if I was you, I would always buy a used vehicle. Even if you're a millionaire and you don't have any debts, I would still buy something 1 or 2 or 3 years used, so the person before you can take the hit. That's just a common sense life tip. But if you're a millionaire and you have the cash, then by all means buy something that's brand new. If you never had a new car and it's going to make you feel good, just know you're taking a bath on it 5 minutes after driving off the lot. But if you buy 2019 and it's 2020 now, Ford Fusion hybrid, about 26K, give or take, depending on the mileage. Or if it's brand new, it's probably about 25, 26, or if it's a 2020. That would cost you about 5 months of work. That would cost you going to work for 5 straight months to pay that thing off. So you showing up every day at your job, January, February, March, April, and all of May, to pay for that vehicle. That's going to drive you to and from your job and drive you to and from your kids' practices and to take road trips and do fun stuff. Because for most people, if you're not living in New York City or maybe like a small pocket of LA and your commute's not huge, you probably need a vehicle. It is what it is at this stage of the game. So that would cost you 5 months of work and 5 months of effort. And obviously if you finance it, which is a crazy thing, it'll cost you way more. And that's what people don't like to talk about, which I'll dive into in the next thing. If you were to get a 2,500 square foot house at just 10% down, 30-year mortgage, your monthly payments on that purchase price, let's say of $300,000, that is going to cost you about 11 years and 6 months of work total to pay that bad boy off. Now, these are roundabout estimates. If you want to go a different route, let's say you're going to get a more moderate priced home. Instead of $300K, your budget is less. You're going to get a 1,600 square foot home in Nebraska, and you're going to put 15% down and a 30-year mortgage of monthly payments at about $200,000 purchase price. That would cost you 7 years and 2 months total of your life of work time to pay that off. Now, obviously, if you're financing something over the course of 30 years, depending on the interest rate and what you have, more often than not, your house is going to cost you sometimes almost double what the initial purchase price was, depending on how much money you put down, depending on what the interest rate is. And clearly, if you guys don't put 20% down, you're probably paying PMI insurance, which is basically just, I don't want to call it stupid insurance, but it's basically just insurance you pay to the bank so they ensure you're not a deadbeat and you actually pay their debt. So basically, I think And every $100,000 you finance, PMI is about $75, give or take. So if your home was 300K and you only put 10% down, which is $30,000, which for most people is a lot of money, you're going to pay an extra probably $200 or $150 to $200 a month in PMI insurance, which just adds to the total. But the point I'm driving at is these things take huge chunks of your life to pay off. It's not just, time at work, it's your lifetime that you could be doing anything else with to pay for that. Now, obviously, you need shelter, you need clothes, you probably need a vehicle, I get that. But just understand, is the juice worth the squeeze when you're sacrificing your lifetime with friends and family and loved ones and to travel and to do things that really light you up and bring you joy? Are the material things bringing you as much joy as other things you could be spending your time doing, as opposed to spending time at work to earn money to buy this stuff? And that's all it says, is just a conversation about happiness. What's going to bring you the biggest ROI? And what I mean by return on investment is return on happiness investment, because that's the entire game. If you're not happy, who gives a fuck about your 4,000 square foot house? If you're not happy, who gives a shit about your Mercedes? It really is a moot point. People say, well, Jeremy, those things are going to bring me happiness. They do not. My life is no different whether I live in an 1,800 square foot house or a 4,800 square foot house. I go to work at the same time, I come home at the same time, I have the same arguments, I have the same problems, I have the same joys, the same happiness. No, and honestly, I probably got to be at work more to pay for the shit. So I probably got to be stressed a little bit more. And so the quality of my life is probably less, unless I can do it and pay cash for it and do it the right way. But if I have to finance it and I have a bigger nut every month to cover, my life happiness probably goes down the bigger, the nicer, the newer stuff that I have. Now, if you do it, in my opinion, paying it in cash, being patient, doing it the right way, doing it when it is a blessing, not a burden, then I think you're okay. But a lot of people want to rush and do things too fancy. It's just like fitness. It's no different. Everybody wants to be shredded in 2 weeks. Everybody wants to, build muscle and lose fat at the same time. In 3 months, they want to look like, they want to go from John Candy to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, so do I. It'd be amazing. But you can't do that. Just like most people can't really afford $1 million house and pay for it in cash. And the people that can't, respect, you do it. Most people, that would take them probably into their, late 30s, 40s, maybe 50s. Some people that would never happen because they're not diligent enough to save the money. So if by buying these things, you're trading your lifetime for them, but it's causing you more stress and pain in the back end, is it really worth it? Only you can answer that question for you. I'm not telling you what your dreams are and what your happiness level is, and that's the only thing I predicate every decision on every single day. Is this going to bring me more stress or more happiness? And when I do something, I'm not against doing things that push me outside my comfort zone and cause me stress and anxiety and, I guess exhaust me. I'm willing to do those things if I know the return on that stress, anxiety, and time, effort investment is really worth it. Because I value time more than anything else. And I hate when people disrespect my time and don't value my time. When they show up late to shit, or they no call, no show. Nothing bothers me more than that. So, and when I'm talking about all this stuff, keep in mind, you guys, the amount of work needed for these items is based on an annual salary of $60K. So if your annual salary is $30,000, the work time is going to be double to get all the shit I listed. So if you don't make 60 grand and you make less than that, your work time is doubled on all this stuff to get there. And same note, if you're a person out there and you're crushing it and you're making 120K a year, or 240, or 440, you're a 1%er. The measurements are going to be shaved in half and then by a third, and so on as you go down the list. So obviously your greatest wealth building tool is your income, and you can gauge it, from there. That's why I always harp on, you should love what you do, or at least like most days, or at least be able to tolerate it and not fucking hate it, because you're trading your lifetime for that money. So then what you do with that money is probably the next important thing, because if we know your time is the most precious commodity you have, and you're going to work and you're shitting away your lifetime for that, don't waste your money on dumb shit. Set budgets, be diligent, give every dollar a name, and know where it's going. It will help you with your mental fitness and your emotional fitness far more than almost anything else when you start to operate from there. Now, of course, there are alternatives to exchanging hours in our lives for material possessions. You can go the reverse and you can kind of flip it, and you can say, okay, instead of doing all these things to acquire money, to buy stuff that may or may not bring you happiness. Again, you're the only one who knows that. When you look at how you invest time in other ways. So maybe you don't buy as much stuff and you don't have to work as long or as hard or as much doing something you hate. Now, if you love your job, go all in on it. That's why I say the synergy happens, and it's amazing, because if you love what you do or you like what you do and you're passionate about it, you kind of get lost in the process. You find yourself at home at 6:50 p.m. on a Friday night in your home office doing a podcast when you could be doing 97 other things, but you're doing this because you get jacked by it. It's your oxygen. You know it's going to help somebody change the way that they spend their time, effort, energy, and their money. It's going to change their life. And they're going to hear this hopefully far beyond, like, when you're dead and you're gone, and they listen to it and say, holy shit, this crazy once ripped fitness dude who looked like Bruce Willis gave me this tips and it changed my fucking life. I would take more pride in that than anything else. So I get lost in it, and the byproduct is we make money on the back end. But if you think of it in a different context of just that, it takes you such a little time to do other things that have such a bigger impact, that, and they pay you back, maybe not in a financial monetary sense, but in a spiritual capital, like an emotional capital, like a, intrinsic riches that money doesn't really do. So if you look at it like, yeah, it takes me 10 minutes, to pay for a Starbucks coffee. It also takes you probably just 10 minutes to tell your kid a bedtime story. And your time is probably much better spent doing that than grinding out a couple more emails. It takes you just 45 minutes for an evening walk with your spouse, or just having a real conversation with them, as opposed to squeezing in another work call. Or 60 minutes to help your son or daughter with their homework, or go throw a baseball with them in the backyard, or shoot hoops with them. And those things are important. And for a lot of people, they happen few and far between. I don't admittedly have a ton of memories playing sports with my dad, because my dad's not really a sports dude, and just how he's wired and built and those things. But I'll say this, I do remember, playing catch with him in my backyard as a kid. And I don't know how many times it happened. It could have been once. It could have been, 7 times. I don't know, but I remember at least once it happened for sure. And that's just a cool memory I had. And I don't have a ton of those. And I think the, 26 minutes he probably spent doing that with me, hopefully for him, is just an amazing memory for him as it is for I. And that is a much better way for him to spend his time than just sit and grind out a couple more minutes at work for, another $37. Because who really gives a shit, right? Now, obviously, if you guys need money and you're struggling, you have to do what you have to do. But these are precious minutes you can invest in things, not just to buy stuff. And again, the money we earn is ours to keep. And we can spend it any way we wish. And there's no right or wrong. I'm not the moral police. I'm not here to judge anybody. If you're happy, just keep doing you. But if you think of it this way, if you listen to this podcast when you go to work, and you really audit how you spend your time, and really audit and budget how you spend your money with your wife or with your husband or with your spouse and team, and really just be diligent about it, it can be a helpful exercise to realize how many hours of our lives go into each purchase we make. This can be a helpful way and a healthy way, in my opinion, to realize how many hours of our lives go into each purchase that we make. And when you buy things, think, how much effort, energy is this going to take for me to buy this? And is it worth that? And it's always wise to remember we can spend our hours pursuing items that are far greater in value than just material possessions. And I think that's when you really come rich, when you realize that you can spend your hours pursuing things that are far greater than just material possessions. Yet, many people spend so much of their lives just chasing stuff, to find that when they get the stuff, it's almost like an empty feeling. And it's like, what's next? They have this almost like habituation. It's a shiny car, it's great, it's awesome. And the new model comes out, and now they think the car sucks and they got to get rid of it. And I think you'd be far better off chasing something that would bring you more internal joy, value, and happiness than just the newest shiny insert, whatever you're chasing. But again, I'm a realist too. I understand we live in an economical world and we all have to work and hustle and grind. And I would argue that I work more hours than anybody listening to this podcast right now, but I don't hate it. And I've seen the payoff, and it's also, I made this bed and now I got to sleep in it, for lack of a better phrasing. It's what's required of this life. If you want to play at this level and do what I'm doing and do all the things that I'm doing, and if you want it to grow and be able to pivot and shift gears, maybe do something later in life or do something that's, brings me value. I look at this as all of this is like a fun hobby to me. I just happen to go all in on it and be able to make enough money to, support myself and, my family and have fun along the way. And on the same note, when I look at these numbers, that's why I'm not a huge fan, you guys, of paying interest on things. And I would never judge anybody for what they do, but I'm approaching paying off our house here. We're making another payment tomorrow, which is February the 1st. And I probably only have that payment and one or two other payments to go. So either my home is probably going to be paid off, knock on wood, either the end of February or the end of March, and that will be it. I'll be completely debt free. I'll own my home outright, and I'll share that whole story with you guys. And I just got tired of giving the bank extra money for something I bought, and they're basically just charging you a fee because you didn't have the cash up front to buy it outright. And it's been a journey and a struggle for sure, but it's a freeing feeling to know that I'm almost out the other end. And I will share that with you guys, not to brag or to sound awesome, but to show you that it can be done if you choose to do something like that, and you can choose to live life differently. And the main reason we did it, for one, I don't like living with, the debt around your neck, even though like our house payment is not crazy for the amount of money we make. It really doesn't move the needle either way, but I just didn't want to be obligated to somebody else. And I didn't want to keep, when you look at every year they send you a statement of how much interest you paid, and it just makes me sick to look at it. It's how I'm wired. I don't want to pay them more than it's worth for something. I want to just get rid of it, and I can choose to do whatever I want. I can invest that money for the rest of my life and have it pay me interest as opposed to pay interest. And I believe that's how you really become wealthy. At least that's been my experience the last 5 years when we really started investing in, things outside of just depreciating assets. And I think you'll find it the same. And when you can live in that space and understand when you've worked hard for something, and you've paid for it, and you've paid for it in full, you're way more mindful of your decisions and choices. Like when I buy my next vehicle, I'll pay for it that day in cash right up front on the spot. Right? Financing isn't even an option. I'll never take a car loan as long as I live under any circumstance. It's not who I am. I'm not judging anybody who does or has to. It's just not how I'm wired. And when you do it that way, you think about it a lot harder. If you're going to go buy a vehicle for 20 grand, 30 grand, or $40,000, and you're going to give them $20, $30, or $40,000 cash that day on the spot, you think about it long and hard. You do your research. Instead of just saying, hey, give us $3,000 today and we'll put you on payments over time, because that's less painful for people, even though when you do it that way, you're paying way more on it. It's easier for people to do because they don't want to eat the upfront cost upfront and take the brunt of it as a load. And that's something you have to think about. Okay, do I want to, really pay $30,000 for something, or pay $39,000 for something? Even though you can stretch the payments out, it's costing you more of your life to pay for it. And that's what I'm driving at here. I got sick of looking at my house costing me more of my lifetime to pay for it. I wanted to just do it as quickly as we could once we got serious about this about 13 months ago, as fast as we could, and give them as little of my lifetime as possible to just get fucking rid of it. And then I can spend the rest of my life doing whatever I want and just having fun and not being stressed about things that I owe to other people. And that's the biggest takeaway, is just I wanted to stop exchanging hours of my life just for material possessions. I wanted to be able to just work, have fun, and then buy the things I want to buy from there. And so hopefully you guys got the gist of this, and just understanding, every single day we wake up, most of us, and we go to a job, and we don't just buy things with money. We buy them with hours of our life. And when you really sit back and understand that's what you're doing, I think you're going to start making some different decisions and choices. And if you could take anything from me, just predicate every decision you make off of happiness. What's going to make you the happiest and cause you the least amount of stress and the least amount of pain every single day? And I think a lot of times people are buying stuff just to impress people, or just because they think it's the right chapter of their life, or that's the thing they're supposed to do now. And then they look back and they regret that decision. And two things I'll leave you with quickly on money that I heard a long time ago that I try to live my life by. Number one, if you bought something and you wouldn't buy it again, you should sell it. If you bought something and you could buy that same thing again, if the answer is no, you wouldn't, you should sell that thing. Now, would I buy my house again today at this market price? Hell no, it's insane. My house has over doubled in value since I bought it. It has just been ridiculous what's happened in real estate. But if you show me my same house today at the price I purchased it for, I sure as hell would buy it again. I didn't think it was a great deal at the time, but little did I know that the economy in the world was going to go crazy. So I for surely would rebuy my house again. So if you're sitting in a home right now that you say, man, we overpaid for this, we wouldn't buy it again, I don't think it's worth it, maybe you can think about selling it and downsizing to something that would be a smaller payment and less bills. And even though you downsize in home, you upsize in happiness, you upsize in joy, you upsize in free time. And the other one is when you're making a purchase that you're, kind of stressed about. And I'm not talking about a home, I'm talking about like toys and fun and material things that you're doing just for enjoyment. If you're nervous about buying them because you're not sure you have enough money, ask yourself, if you took the equivalent of that amount of money and you burned it in the middle of your living room, would it stress you out? Would it change your life? And if the answer is no, then go ahead and buy that thing. So if you're a person who wants to buy a motorcycle or a snowmobile, or you want to take a trip to Italy, and it's going to cost you $8,000. If you lit $8,000 on fire in the middle of your room, would that change the scope of your life and financial future? And if the answer is no, take the trip. If the answer is no, buy the snowmobile. If the answer is no, buy the motorcycle, whatever it is. Now, if you have to finance those things, you're probably not ready to purchase them yet, in my opinion. If it's going to stress you out and going to cause you to have to pay, it off on a credit card over the course of months, or it's dipping into your emergency fund and you're really stressed about the purchase, but you think you have to have it now, maybe just wait and don't invest that much of your lifetime into it. And stop thinking about it as it's just money I earned from my job, because if you learn anything in the last 33 minutes, we don't buy things with money, we buy them with hours of our life. And the hours of your life are the most important thing you have on this earth, because once they're gone, you'll never get them back. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that and took something away from it, just something to think of, outside the box. I'm a big believer in just being happy as hell in everything you do. And I see a lot of people not happy with, how healthy they are and how they're spending their time with fitness. And a lot of that comes down to what they're doing at work and the financial constraints and restrictions that they live in, and just not really seeing things clearly. But when you start to see things in terms of hours of your life you invest in them, stuff can get pretty good pretty quick. So if you are on iTunes right now, stop, don't be a lazy ass. Go to the podcast app on your iPhone, scroll your finger. If you're watching me on YouTube, you can see me scrolling. Scroll your finger all the way down. Drop me a 5-star, leave a comment or two. I truly would appreciate it. Again, positive or negative, whatever you truly think of this, the more positive, the better. And again, if you know a friend or family member who struggles with money or their job or purchasing things, or they're just not quite to where they need to be, share this podcast with them. I know it could go a long way. If I would have heard something like this when I was, 22, 23, it would have changed a lot of my life decisions up front. Admittedly, I didn't have any money, so I couldn't have spent any, but just to think of things in a different context, outside of what we're taught oftentimes by, society and the news and social media, and even your parents, It's a really unique way to look at things. And sometimes it's hard to see the forest from the trees, but when you can step out of the forest, you can see what's really going on. And also, if you guys are on a MacBook or an iPad, literally click the iTunes icon, hit ratings and reviews, drop me a 5-star, leave a comment. I would appreciate it. It does help us out a ton, and it keeps me going, and it keeps me pumping out as much awesome shit for you guys as I possibly can. So with that said, I am going to bring my wife on the podcast here probably the next couple of days. Maybe tomorrow, maybe later this week. We'll find out. Our schedules are crazy, but I promise you guys I'll do that because you had a ton of questions for us and for her. But if you have anything else, head it over to me as soon as possible on Instagram, Facebook, or email, and I will get to it. And until next time, eat well, train hard, be nice to people, and please, you guys, keep doing shit you love with people you enjoy because your life is too short not to. I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.